Hi, I'm Alex Lopez. This is my report on environmental sustainability, what I do, and what my community does abroad. First off, we here in Eustis, Florida have a great recycling program. We recycle a lot of our goods. This saves a lot of space in landfills and protects habitat loss of native species, which results in 40% of all extinctions. We here in the Sunshine State have a lot of lawns. This takes up an abnormally large amount of water, but fortunately though, the Homeowners Association has a rain pool collector or retention pond up the road, which we get most of our water to water our lawns from. This helps save water from the aquifer here in Florida, which is built on a huge aquifer under the ground, and this helps make that resource available to future generations. Here at my house we use solar panels. We use them to heat our pool, and it saves a lot of energy from the grid, whereas other houses would use natural gas or fossil fuels to help heat their pools in the wintertime. This uses a lot of fossil fuels, which contributes to the CO2 global... What? We also do 5 things that are unsustainable. The first being that we drive a lot. We drive approximately 33 miles to school and 33 miles back to home, which is 66 miles in total, which is much more than the average American and far more than the average world citizen. This process takes up a lot of gasoline and burns a lot of CO2, which contributes to global warming. I don't know what you want.
The car.
But I also love my car. The second process that is unsustainable is our numerous use of electricity. We use a lot more than the average household or the average American. I like to play a lot of video games and watch a lot of TV, so it tends to add up. We also don't have any solar panels on our roof to generate electricity for the house, nor does any other house pretty much in the state of Florida, and which is a disgrace. Since we are the Sunshine State, it should be our main product and crop. Now I'd like to talk about my community and its unsustainable endeavors. During the recent economic downturn, a lot of retail space was abandoned in the state of Florida. But instead of building on that old retail space, we decided to build on new retail space, which takes up a lot more room. This process is completely unsustainable, and we must stop or regulate this process if we want to make land a future resource available to future generations. Are you filming? Okay. Another thing that my community does that is completely unsustainable is we live in Lake County, Florida, which has a lot of trucks. Big trucks. And these consume a lot of oil and a lot of gasoline. They use a lot of dirty diesel, and they burn off a lot of CO2, and a lot of them smoke, which is the term I use when these drivers rev their engines, and a lot of black smoke just comes out of their exhaust. And it's really an unsustainable process, and it's really an act that can be easily solved if we just start driving normal cars. And for the 5th portion of this assignment, I'd like to talk about our community as a global community. This assignment talked about us being a pebble in a lake. Well, it's my opinion that we must now rock, because the time for small changes is passing us by. This assignment talked about us being a pebble. Well, I believe it's time for us to become a rock. The time for small changes in a local community has passed. It is time for broad changes on a global scale if we wish to survive as a species in the coming decade and years to come. It is time for us to lead. Great changes must occur if we wish to survive. We must stop relying on fossil fuels and primitive means of providing electricity and starting looking to the sun for our power. We have drones now that can fly for 5 years without stopping on the ground by solar means. We as a community must reduce our dependence on fossil fuels and look to the sun for our energy. In order to survive as a species within the coming years, this switch is necessary, this switch needs to be swift, and the switch needs to be dramatic on a global scale. Right now, the Great Barrier Reefs are deteriorating into nothingness, and there is a plastic drop the size of Texas in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. These practices are completely unsustainable, and they need to stop. It is my belief that the governments of the world need to meet within the next year and decide on a global standard for how much energy must be provided by solar or by other renewable means. The U.S. should be the forefront in this prospect, leading the other nations as it always has. I came up with a bill last year at my Youth in Government Conference, which is another program I do, and I came up with a proposal that the buildings of Florida should be mandated to produce 15% of their electricity by solar energy by the year 2016, and that percentage would increase by 10% increments over the course of until it reaches 55% of the total energy provided by solar means. In conclusion, this change is the most important aspect of our generation and the most important role in our coming crisis for energy and in terms of our survival as a species. We cannot depend on free markets to determine which fuels we use for our energy. Pause. And finally, I'd like to present to you with my Pantone. Every time I see the glory of the sun, I am reminded of its great power. I use its power to heat my pool for fun, and it heats my water with which I shower.